Hello, I'm Carl Seibert. Thanks for joining me. In today's video, we have some good news. The Google Images Licensable feature. Much anticipated and much talked about. I just put out a suite of overview videos about applying metadata that were all pegged to getting ready for licensable. There's a bit of a difficulty there because I had the Google and IPTC documentation about what licensable was going to look like, but I didn't have the actual product, so there was a little bit of anxiety. I'll cut to the chase. I won't keep anybody in suspense. The news now is licensable is real, depending on where you were in the world in the last 48 hours. It became live for you. And my advice about how to prepare for licensable, how to trigger your licensable badge with your IPTC metadata is indeed valid. Everything I said in those videos appears to work just fine. And the feature itself appears to work just fine. Right now we're looking at an image of a licensable badge on a pretty picture of Portland, Oregon, a stock picture fairly obviously from Getty Images. It appears to be advertising Getty Images. So let's take a look at this thing and see how it works. We'll pop over here to a browser view, and I've done a Google Images search for Portland. Portland, Oregon is in the news this week, so it seemed like a good idea. Here's the raw result for Portland, Oregon. Here's a pro tip if you want to see some licensable badges. Hit the Tools button in your browser in Google Images, go to Usage Rights, and go down and check Commercial and Other Licenses. Bang! Now you'll see a whole screen full of licensable badges. And here they are. Here are licensable badges on every one of these pictures. And as you can see, if you hover over the thumbnail with your mouse, the badge expands and it says licensable. So here's a news picture from Portland, Oregon, and you can see in recent pictures, the licensable badge also includes a time element. We'll click through to this picture. This is a Getty Images picture, and here we are on its preview page. On the preview page, as noted in the other videos, we see the creator of the photo, we see the copyright notice for the photo, and we see the photo's credit line. Google has supported those three IPTC fields for a couple of years now, and for the last several months, they've been appearing right here, right up front on the preview of the images, where you would expect to see byline information. The licensable feature appears, the licensable feature appears on this row. And we have a couple of tags. We have get this image on and a colon and a link. In this case, this link goes to a specific e-commerce page on gettyimages.com where you can go ahead and buy a license for this picture, which is pretty much exactly what the functionality of licensable was all about. We have a search by image link. This link can actually be pretty useful if you're looking for a picture and you find a picture that you're interested in, but maybe it didn't have enough metadata to find your way through to the person who owned it or something like that. So you can see if you can find a different instance of the same image in Google Images and go from there. Now we have a link called License Details. Now, the way these links work is that the License Details link leads to the URL that's specified in the IPTC copyright URL or Web Statement of Rights field. This other link leads to the location specified in the licensor URL in the plus extended IPTC information. So let's see what happens. If I click on this link on this particular Getty picture, I will be taken in short order. There we go. I'll be taken in short order to this e-commerce page. And with just a click of my mouse, I can go ahead and buy a license for this image. This is exactly what licensable is supposed to do for a big sophisticated corporation that has the time and programming resources to send us to an individual page for this particular picture. We'll go back. Let's follow the license details link. And the license details link is going to take us to this generic Getty Images Content License Agreement page. And this page explains all the different kinds of licenses that you can buy from Getty Images. It does not explain exactly what licenses are available for that particular picture, because not even Getty Images can know that in advance. So let's take a look at the metadata on that picture that drove those links. So we'll pop over to the picture. Now this is a Getty Images editorial picture. Getty Images editorial photos always have impeccable metadata. So here you go. There's a nice caption and headlines and all of the information that you would expect to find on a well marked up picture. Here we have the copyright URL field. Obviously, a human being did not type the contents of that field, and I honestly don't know if Getty provides the contents of that field in a template or if they themselves fill in the field after one submits a picture to them. I just don't know. But if we slide down here to the bottom of my interface, we're in Photo Mechanic here at the moment, to the licensors array, which is a bunch of subfields, and we open it up. Here's the URL that took us to that Getty Images e-commerce page that was specific for this picture. In my recent series of videos, I advised normal independent photographers who don't have a giant stock photo website to make both of these URLs point to the same place. It could just be to your homepage, but I actually advised building a very quick licenses landing page on your website that would tell people in very general terms how you generally kind of license your pictures, but most importantly, it would contain very easy contact information so that people can simply ask you what kind of license might possibly be available for that picture. And you can tell them whatever the answer might be for that particular picture, which could range all the way from none, I can't license that picture to you, to maybe, sure, you were honest and you asked, and here, I'll give you a license for free. Go ahead and use the picture. Let's pop back to our Portland search, which is here. And let's look for some other pictures that aren't Getty Images pictures. Perhaps unsurprisingly, here on the first day of licensable operating, is that many of the pictures that have licensable badges have come from Getty Images. That's not at all surprising because Getty Images worked with the IPTC and CPIC on all of these features that use IPTC metadata on Google Images. So when I scrolled through these results, down a little ways, I came to this one. Now, this is an image. It's from Portland, Maine, not Portland, Oregon, and it's got its licensable badge. And this image indeed belongs to an independent photographer, Michael Eric Barabee, who runs a company called MaineVirtualHomeTours.com, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a real estate photography company in southern Maine. Michael's image doesn't have the Get Image On link that's driven by the licensor's URL field in that array, but it does have the license details field. Now that tells us right away that he filled out the copyright URL field in his metadata, but he didn't fill out the licensor URL field. Another thing that we can see here that makes me happy, even though I had nothing to do with it, if you look at Michael's copyright notice, here it is. Copyright Michael Eric Barabee, MaineVirtualHomeTours.com. He's included some very simple, brief contact information right in his copyright notice. So anybody who sees this picture, licensable badge notwithstanding, understands how they can get in touch with Michael to talk about licensing this picture. I've advised people to do this for some time. It turns out that Michael never saw any of my videos. He did this just out of common sense, which is just fine. So let's see where his license details link. Okay, this is the copyright URL in his IPTC metadata. And here we are. It has taken us to his business's homepage, which is just fine. It'll get the job done because here we go, right at the bottom. We can contact him if we want to hire him for an assignment or if we want to buy one of his pictures. We see his URL, we see his phone number, we see his email address, and everything is just fine. The same target page would work just fine for the other link too. For the Get Image On link, this will just work perfectly. As it turns out, when I talked to Michael Eric Barabee, he told me that he was unaware that Google was going to do the licensable badge. This is just the way he had marked up his pictures based on his own interpretation of what the appropriate thing to do was, and it works. He got his badge. He's a real estate photographer, not a stock photographer, so this might not do him a lot of good commercially. But if you are a stock photographer or an editorial photographer, this could be a commercial boon. Either way around, it's a good thing. And Barabee complimented Google for stepping up to do this for photographers. Now, if you don't want the badge, you cannot put a value in copyright URL. Let's pop over and take a look at the metadata on this particular picture. Here we go. And here we are. We're looking at the metadata on Michael's picture as it's seen in EXIF tool. And here we have his web statement of rights or copyright URL field. And here we see the URL, the way he filled it into this field. And you'll notice that it has the protocol. It's a complete URL. It has the HTTP or HTTPS and the colon and the slashes and all of that stuff. According to my reading of Google's documentation, if you don't do it this way, if you don't put the complete URL in, you won't get your licensable badge. In other words, if I just put metadatamatters.blog in here, my interpretation is I won't get the badge. Michael Steedle of the IPTC doesn't agree with me. He says the badge will appear, but the link won't. And honestly, I don't have a way to test that right off the bat. There are billions of pictures in Google Images, and I could spend days looking to find a picture that doesn't have a badge, that does have a web statement of rights embedded. So I just don't know what to tell you there. In my interpretation, by the way, of the Google documentation, if you include the licensor name in the licensor array, Google will use that as the label for Get Image On. Again, I can't tell you if that's true, because amongst the pictures that I found here on the first day, I haven't found any that had a value in the licensor name. So I don't know if that works or not. Apparently, Google is taking the main domain name of whatever website is specified in that field and using that as the label. So that's just fine. Getty Images comes up gettyimages.com. Mine would come up carlseibert.com, and everything is good. So there's another way of triggering the licensable badge, in addition to simply filling out your metadata appropriately. So let's pop back over to our browser. And if we look at this picture right here, downtown Portland, circa 1914, this is Portland, Oregon, I think. This picture came from Wikimedia Commons. The other method for triggering your licensable badge is to trigger it with schema.org structured data on your web page. And apparently Wikimedia Commons is doing this. If we use this picture as an example, and we'll notice here that the label on Get Image On is in fact Wikimedia Commons, not the domain name of Wikimedia Commons. If we click through to it, it takes us to this page, which is the one-up page for this picture on Wikimedia Commons. So it's functionally equivalent to the way Getty Images is doing it. But on this particular picture, there is no metadata. There is no metadata on a lot of Wikimedia Commons pictures. And I personally think that that's pretty much of a big problem. But if we do view source for that Wikimedia Commons one-up page, and we search down in here, way down at the bottom of 366 lines of code, we find schema.org structured data. So here it is. This is how Wikimedia Commons triggered the licensable badge on their picture. And this is a good way to do it if you have a collection with millions of pictures that already exist. If it's not practical to go back and embed metadata, you can do as Wikimedia Commons has done here. And this is going to be a great thing for them, because this means that pictures of theirs that turn up on Google Images can click through directly to the right page, and people can understand immediately what their obligations are under the Creative Commons license, if indeed the picture is Creative Commons. This particular picture is public domain, so you can use it at will. But to be able to use a Creative Commons picture, there are certain obligations that you're going to have to meet. So there it is. We've arrived. We have seen licensable. It works, and it's good. So this is another happy day for photographers in general. It's a happy day for me because I don't have to go back and redo all of those instructional videos on how to use this thing. And if you want to, you can go to any of those videos and get an overview of working with metadata with a particular eye to these Google image features in any one of several different programs. So, do you have a Google Images licensable story to tell at this early point? What do you think of this whole thing? Jump in the comments down below, comment on my blog, use the contact link, or reach out on social media. We still have an epidemic going on, so be careful out there, folks. Take good care, and until next time, mind your metadata.